David here with figbootonpens. This year, when preparing for the DC Pen Show, there were many things that I wanted to check out and test out, but there was only one pen on my list to purchase. Now, I walked away from the show with more than one new pen, but it's tough to limit yourself to only one at a large show like that. But there was only one that I walked in there intending to purchase. And that pen is the Wahl Eversharp Decoband. And that's what I have here for you today. What I'm going to do is go over some of the parts and the features of the Decoband, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for, show some measurements, some size comparisons, and then provide a writing sample. Wahl Eversharp began producing and mass marketing mechanical pencils back in 1915. They began producing fountain pens beginning in 1917 under the name Wahl, and then Eversharp was added beginning in around 1929. During the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, Wahl Eversharp was a very successful brand producing models such as the Decoband, the Doric, and the Skyline. In the mid to late 40s, the market was beginning to shift toward ballpoint pens. The company put a great deal of money into research and development in an effort to create a market of their own ballpoint pens. And this proved to be pretty much a financial disaster for the company. The pens they produced were plagued with issues, and the cost of warranty repairs, in addition to a patent infringement lawsuit, really drained the company's finances. The company was eventually sold to the Parker Pen Company, where the brand was relegated to being a lower tier brand under the Parker banner. Parker sold the company, and then it was sold again, and production ceased, and the brand existed in basically name only for almost 50 years before being sold again and revived by the current owners of the brand. The company currently produces two product lines, the Skyline series and the Decoband series, and it's the Decoband that we will be looking at today. So, okay, enough about company history. Let's take a look at a pen. The pen arrives in this incredible box. This is not a shoe box. This is actually what the pen arrives in. A little flap in the front, and inside we have this piano lacquered box. Try to get it without the lights in there. But you can see here that in gold foil, it has the Wahl Eversharp double checkmark logo and the Wahl Eversharp name. Inside the box is some soft suede-like material. I don't believe it is suede. It's just kind of suede-like material, but very soft. And then inside we have a little booklet that has some company history and then some information about the gentleman that revived the brand, which is Emmanuel and Sid. And then here's a picture of Sid at the DC show. He's very passionate about his brand and very knowledgeable about the pen making business. That if you should ever be at a show and see that Sid has a table, I'd highly recommend stopping by to check out his pens and have a conversation. Also included here in the box is this little pen sleeve, which I'll actually show some more information about later. Then also included in the box is a bottle of the Wahl Eversharp ink. They actually have two colors. They have Wallberry and Everberry. I already owned a bottle of the Wallberry, and so I picked up the Everberry with this pen. This is, a very luxurious box. I'm a bit torn when it comes to really nice boxes. On one hand, it's very luxurious and it looks fantastic. But on the other hand, I'm not going to store my pen in this box, and the most use I'll personally get out of it is showing it to you within this review. Some boxes I just throw away, but this one is just too nice to throw away. So I'm kind of stuck having it someplace. Now, maybe there's folks out there that do store their pens in the box. I just don't have that much space to afford to have something this large just to hold a single pen. This box is very, very cool. I'm just not sure how practical it is. No, I think this is so large that, basically so large so that it's going to hold the ink and that the ink can fit in here. And I think that's probably the main purpose of why it's so tall. But it just seems like a lot of wasted space. Now, if this somehow converted into a box that could hold like 6 pens or 2 layered that held 12, then that would be fantastic. And I would use that in a second. So if anyone out there designing a pen, if you had a large box that then can kind of be converted into something that you could use on a daily basis, I really like that. So this box is nice, but the pen is nicer, so and more important. So let's have a look at it. Here is the Wahl Eversharp Decoband. This is a very large pen. It is made from ebonite, and this is the rosewood finish that is very, very beautiful. All of the trim is gold-plated brass. And the modern Decoband is inspired by the Decoband pens of the 1920s. They're about 30% larger than the vintage model. And let's start with the cap. The finial has a glossy black finish, then a thin gold band. Then there's an inlaid Wahl Eversharp double checkmark logo right here. And then we have this clip. Now, I will say at first I thought the clip looked a little short for this large cap, but it's actually really grown on me. It has the Wahl Eversharp logo engraved on it and has a wheel on the end. And the wheel actually operates very nicely. I own other pens with a wheel design where you can't spin it with your finger, but this one you can. And the design makes for a real smooth entry when you're putting it in a pocket or attaching it to your shirt. It just helps it slide right in. The barrel is perfectly straight, and then we have a thin gold band, and then a thicker band with a Greek key design, and then another thin band. This cap uses what's called a stacked ring construction, where each piece of the cap is hand cut and dry fit into place without adhesive. Now, what does this mean? It means that the band will twist if you turn it. When I purchased this pen, Sid showed this to me, and I'm really glad that he did, because if I would have discovered this on my own, I might have thought there was something wrong with the cap. But no, this is by design. I don't know if you could tell here, but you can actually twist the band right here. And that, I would have thought something was wrong with it, but it is actually by design. So now when I use this pen, I find myself actually playing with the band when you hold the cap in my hand. And Sid actually calls this an executive pacifier. There is a slight angled step down to the barrel, which is straight, and then angles down slightly at the end. And you can see here that the rosewood finish of this ebonite is just very, very beautiful. I really like the striping and the slight contrast in color. Then the end of the barrel has another thin gold band, and then a glossy back end or black end to match the front of the cap. But the piece on the end has a little hole in it, which we'll take a closer look at here in a bit. The cap twists off to reveal this spectacular 14K number 8 nib. The pen is offered with 2 different nib types, the Super Flex and the Gold Flex. The Super Flex is a much more flexible, and the Gold Flex is what they call more of a semi-flex. This nib is the Gold Flex, and I enjoy it very much. I tried out the Super Flex nib. While it wrote beautifully, it just had a bit too much flex for my tastes. I really use my pens on a daily basis for daily writing, and for me it was just a bit too flexy for taking notes and writing lists and doing things like that, like I do on a daily basis at work. And while the Gold Flex can still get a good deal of line variation, it's just a little more suited for everyday writing. One thing I have noticed about this pen is that the engraved portion of the nib could be a little bit on the rough side. What I mean by that is that after inking the pen, if you wipe the nib off with a tissue, like I typically do, then some of the small fibers from a soft tissue have a tendency to stick to the nib, which will then encourage a bit more nib creep and produce a nib that looks like this. Now, you can see here some of the fibers which have kind of absorbed some of the ink. Now, I actually think this look is kind of cool. But if you want to prevent this, then when inking the pen, you want to wipe off the nib with something like a micromesh cloth or something along those lines. Then we have another very cool feature of this pen, which is the feed. Just take a look at this. The feed is made from a hard rubber and is coated with a bright red automotive lacquer. The story goes is that Sid's wife had a favorite pair of red-soled Louboutin shoes, which are very high-end, and which was the inspiration for making this feed bright red. Now, I will say that this feed is a bit prone to chipping, and over the months that I have had this pen, it's developed a few small chips. So it's something that you should really be careful with and try not to bang against anything, or you might have a little bit of damage. The section begins with a gold band and then tapers down sharply and then slowly angles back up to these metal threads. Now, the inside of the ebonite cap is threaded, but not with metal. In a perfect world, it'd be nice to have like metal on metal threads just to prevent an odd capping from damaging the threads on the cap, but I haven't had any issues, and I actually haven't heard of anyone else having any issues with it either. For being a very long and girthy pen, I find it very comfortable in my hand. I don't have the largest of hands, but I do find myself drawn to pens with thicker sections, and I do like this one very, very much. The pen can be posted. It does post securely, but I really wouldn't advise it. It doesn't post very deeply, and it adds a great deal of length to this pen. It just looks a little bit silly at this point. And it does really throw off the balance because the cap does weigh a bit. The Decoband has what's called the Chilton style pneumatic filling system. It's made of solid brass and designed to have very few moving parts. What happens is you twist off the end and extend this tube. And then what happens is you cover the hole with your finger and you push down on the tube and with holding your finger over the hole. And by doing that, it will create an increase in air pressure on the inside of the pen, which will squeeze down the ink sac that's inside. And then when you uncover the hole, the pressure is normalized and the sac will draw in ink. The Decoband has a very large ink capacity of about 2 milliliters as well. I mentioned it earlier, but included is a little sleeve. This is an antioxidant sleeve used to protect the pen from UV rays, which will potentially discolor the ebonite over time. So if you store your pens in a place which receives a good deal of sunlight, then you'll probably want to consider keeping it in the sleeve when not in use. Now, big question is, what about the price? This is not an inexpensive pen. The Decoband retails for $850. It comes with in a few different finishes, and they also have a clear demonstrator which sells for $1,250, and a roller ball that goes for $695. The company maintains a very tight control over pricing, so the price will always be the same at any authorized dealer as well as through Wahl Eversharp's site. But the question is it worth the price? I would say yes. This is a lot of money to spend on a pen, but what you're receiving is something truly special. This nib is unlike any other in my collection, and I like its uniqueness. We'll see in the writing sample, but it is fantastic. It is well crafted with quality materials. Is it a perfect pen? No, not many pens are, but it is very, very nice, and I have not regretted purchasing this pen at that price. I rotate through my pens on a regular basis. I actually have an Excel spreadsheet I created to catalog all of my pens and my ink and track usage so I can tell how long it's been since I've used a particular pen. Hey, I'm a data analyst. What else am I going to do? If you'd like to see that sheet in action, I'll put a link to the video in the notes below, but you can see how it works and even download a copy for yourself to use. But like I said, I rotate through my collection on a regular basis and make sure to use the vast majority on a regular basis. And some pens might go a couple of months between uses, but I make sure that this pen is in a much higher rotation. I have a few pens that I can't go longer than a couple of weeks without reaching for, and this is one of those pens. I really like it that much. So that's the Wahl Eversharp Decoband. So here are going to be some measurements, then I'll show some size comparisons, and then provide a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Wahl Eversharp Decoband. Here it is with a Classic Pens LB5, and then here it is with a Visconti Homo Sapiens and a Pelican M1000. Then we have a Pilot Metropolitan, which you can see is significantly smaller, a Lamy All-Star, and then something significantly smaller is a TWSBI VAC Mini. But you can just see how much larger it is than a VAC Mini. So here we have the Wahl Eversharp Decoband. And this is what's called the Gold Flex Nib, which is kind of their semi-flex nib. And that, you know, I'd say in normal writing, it's almost more on the medium to broad side. And then it kind of goes from there. You will see here in the writing that you can get a bit more flex out of it. And the ink that I'm using is the Wahl Eversharp. And this is the Everberry. And that this is what the ink looks like. Here it is. This is the Everberry. And this is the Wahlberry. This is the other ink that they offer. You can see that it's just a little bit more on the purple side. The Everberry looks very similar to like the J. Herband Louis XIV, or even like a Faber-Castell Royal Blue. And this is the bottle that it comes in. I like the Wahl Eversharp bottles. They kind of look like you know, preserves or something like that in here, which is kind of interesting. So here we go with the rest of the writing sample. This is a very unique nib. It feels different than any other nib in my collection, and that's a good thing. I feel like my handwriting looks a little bit different with it just because it's something you kind of have to get used to, just because it does have a little bit of a feel to it. You can get a decent amount of line variation out of this nib. You can see that in starting off very thin, it's not that much, but you could get a good deal of line variation out of here. And that in regard to wetness, it's a pretty wet nib. And in regard to reverse writing, it's a little on the scratchy side, a little sharp, but it doesn't run out of ink at all. And then in regard to some fast writing, there's no issue at all. This feed does a very good job of keeping up. So the Wahl Eversharp Decoband, you know, this is really one of my favorite pens. That in December, when I come out with my revised top 10 list, don't be surprised if you see the Decoband ranked very, very high. It is that special of a pen. So thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later.